Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. Well, we have a great show. We're going to be talking about UFOs and cattle mutilations and government conspiracies and cover-ups and who knows what else will come up while we're talking today. In the first hour, we're going to be speaking with Stan Friedman. In the second hour, we're going to be talking to Chris O'Brien. But don't forget, Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, psychic readings, and energy medicine sessions. That's www.soulhealer.com. It is also brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com, where you too can learn to become a medical intuitive counselor, or energy medicine practitioner. If you missed an episode, well, Just Energy Radio airs live every Thursday evening from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But if you've missed an episode, you can check out our archives on the Just Energy Radio webpage. That's www.justenergyradio.com. We are getting very, very, very close to being in our 7th year of being on air, and you can catch all of those archives on that webpage. While you're there, please do subscribe to our email, and it'll keep you informed of who's coming up. Or you can go to our YouTube channel, that's Just Energy Radio on YouTube, and we have about 2 years worth of archives there that you can stream and check out. And when you're there, subscribe to our channel. We have gone over the 2,000 subscriber mark. So that was a very cool little milestone that happened this past month. And it just keeps, the listeners just keep growing and growing. And I just want to thank everybody that tunes into the show and likes the show. And I keep getting these emails from people that say, I put your show on before I go to bed and I listen to your voice when I go to sleep. And I'm like, well, I hope I'm not putting you all to sleep. I mean, I hope not. Anyway, that's what they say. Hey, I'm just reporting it. Let's see. One of the things that I want to announce, even though I don't have all the information yet, but it's me. I never have all the information. So I've been working on a new video project. So if you have gone to my YouTube channel, either the Just Energy Radio one or the Science and Spirit Me channel, you've noticed that I've put together some videos of my material. And I'm working on a full-length video, which is getting close to completion. Yay. And I'm hoping to have it done by Christmas or just after the first of the year. Don't have a title yet, or else I would tell you. But it's coming out really cool. Okay, I'm even saying it's coming out really cool. So I'll keep you informed as that moves forward. But the other big announcement is March 22nd through 30th. Join myself, Stephen Knapp, Sasha and Janet Lessing, and Bruce Cunningham for Ancient Mysteries International AM14 in Angkor Wat, Cambodia. It is going to be an awesome time. Right now, they have tickets to the conference on sale on the website ancientmysteriesinternational.com. So do check it out, but go to the thing. It's going to be so cool going around and touching all that old stuff and looking at old stuff and running around and touching old stuff. I don't know. That's what I'm going to do. And you can hang out with me and we can touch old stuff together. It'll be fun. Anyway, that's all my announcements for today. So let me tell you a little bit about Stan and get him on the air. Nuclear physicist, lecturer Stanton T. Friedman became interested in UFOs in 1958 and since 1967 has lectured about them at more than 600 colleges and 100 professional groups in 50 U.S. states, 9 Canadian provinces, and 16 other countries, in addition to various nuclear consulting efforts. He has published more than 90 UFO papers and has appeared on hundreds of radio and television programs, including Larry King in 2007 and twice in 2008, and many documentaries. So from StantonFreeman.com, Stan Friedman. Hey, Stan, how are you?
I'm fine, and I've been traveling a lot since you got that PR, because I've now spoken in 18 other countries and in all 10 Canadian provinces. So older but smarter.
Well, we'll just have to, get that updated. But it's, I was looking around on my, the website and looking at some of the archives, and I realized you hadn't been on the show in a long time. And I'm like, I got to get Stan back on because you keep us up to date on, what's going on in the UFO world, and I just love having you on. So, yay. Okay.
Well, I'm glad to be on again.
Well, okay. But usually we've talked about books, and, so today's kind of a free-for-all for me with you. So, so one of the things that I really wanted to talk about, because it seems to be very contemporary, and I'd really like to get your take on it because it seems like you have a really good feel for what's kind of going on in the government mind. But over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of talk about UFO disclosure. Has the sentiment of the U.S. population spurred on any action in the government?
Well, it doesn't appear to me that they have. And I have to tell you, although I participated in the Citizens Disclosure Project big meeting in Washington in April, I am not for total disclosure. Some people think we're entitled to know everything. I don't think so. I worked under security for 14 years, and there is a strong national security aspect to this. If we have learned new technology of potential use for building better craft, bombers, fighters, whatever you want to call them, spacecraft, then I don't think we should be putting that data out on the table unless the Russians and Chinese and the others put theirs out on the table. You don't give potential enemies weapons to use against you. So I am for telling the public that, yes, indeed, the planet is being visited. We've known that since the 40s. Here are our reasons for not releasing everything. And now let's all get together on this planet to start thinking of ourselves as Earthlings instead of nationalistic labels. And you can see the problem there. Do you know any country that wants its citizens to owe their primary allegiance to the planet instead of that individual country? As far as I can tell, nationalism is the only game in town. So it's a difficult step to take from where we are, despite all the government lies. I have found most people, a majority of people, have accepted the notion not only that there's other life out there, but that some of it's coming here. And the kicker here is things have changed drastically in the last 10 years, especially because of the Kepler spy satellite. I say spy, it's not really a spy satellite. It's out there looking for planets in a small chunk of the sky about the size of your fist at arm's length. And everywhere it looks out that particular direction, it finds planets. And now, in contrast to, say, 10 years ago, when the SETI people, and, I think SETI stands for Silly Effort to Investigate, when the SETI people said there might be as many as 8,000 places in the galaxy that could send us signals, now the notion is it's probably more like 8 billion. You see, our view of who we are and how important we are has changed. Some people don't want to admit that. But other civilizations could have sent the equivalent of Kepler out, 1,000, 10,000, a million years ago. They know we're here. We have all kinds of evidence that aliens are visiting, and no evidence that anybody's trying to send us radio signals using technology appropriate to our technology. I hate to say this on radio, but you know, the first long-distance radio transmission on planet Earth was in 1901. You think nobody's ahead of us in technology? I mean, I don't use the slide rule anymore. Why would anybody send us messages with a very old technology to them? And so the kicker here is that I'm in a constant battle with the SETI people to get them to understand that while they have no evidence whatsoever that anybody's sending us signals, we have all kinds of evidence that beings, ETs, call them what you want, are visiting here. Evidence from all over the planet, physical trace cases, radar cases, large scientific studies that the SETI people never talk about, and all kinds of evidence of what I call the cosmic Watergate. You know, a lot of people aren't aware. Well, a lot of people aren't aware of General Carol Bolender, Bolender. He was an Air Force general and engineer who worked on the Lunar Excursion Module way back in 1969. And the Condon Report had come out earlier that year, the University of Colorado study under Dr. Edward U. Condon, which basically said, oh, there's nothing worth looking at here with UFOs. They spent $500,000 before they said that, but what the heck. And they recommended that Project Blue Book, which was ostensibly the only U.S. government group concerned with UFOs from 1952 right on through 1969. He was asked to give an official viewpoint for the Air Force. He had nothing previously to do with Project Blue Book, so he was independently minded. And he wrote a memo, which we didn't see until 10 years later. Somebody got it, luckily, under Freedom of Information. And this memo resulted in the closure of Project Blue Book at the end of 1969. Now, in the memo, he says that reports of UFOs, which could affect national security, are made in accordance with JANAP, J-A-N-A-P, Joint Army Navy Air Force Publication 146, or Air Force Manual 55-11, and are not part of the Blue Book system. An astonishing statement, since we were always told that was the only group concerned with UFOs. 2 paragraphs later, he says, if Project Blue Book is closed, the public will have no place to report UFO sightings. However, as previously noted, reports which could affect national security would continue to be investigated using the procedures designed for that purpose. And yet, since 1969, the Air Force has said, we're not doing anything about UFOs. No national security aspect at all. It's a lie. I mean, it's not surprising that they've been lying, because I can lay out a whole bunch of others, but it's important for people to recognize that what you read in the tabloids and hear on many of the television programs is not the whole story at all. Enormous amount of data that we haven't seen in the light of day. And, you know, even that great newspaper, the New York Times, has on several occasions managed to mangle the truth or distort the truth. Just to give you one example, they came out, when the Air Force came out with the ridiculous 4th explanation for Roswell, crash test dummies dropped all over New Mexico by the Air Force. They made the front page of the Sunday New York Times above the fold. There is no better spot in the newspaper in the whole country than that location. Above the fold, front page, Sunday New York Times. And they bought it hook, line, and sinker. Crash test dummies. Now, there are 2 important difficulties with that explanation. And I talked to the man who'd been head of the program. His picture is in their big fat report, but they didn't talk to him. 2 important things. The dummies, none were dropped until 6 years after Roswell. So we've got time travel for crash test dummies, something new. And secondly, and you can see it in the picture, the dummies for the test to be meaningful. And they were dropped because pilots were flying higher and higher, and if you have ejection seats and so forth, you really want the pilots to survive, or what's the point of having an ejection seat,
Personally, the whole thing with those ejection, the dummies, I think is just so funny because they don't even look like little people with funny heads or anything like that. It just makes you wonder where the government comes up with some of this stuff. Maybe Stan got abducted. Hey, Jim. Well, and I just said that, and I looked in the chat room, and Jim in the chat room said, Stan was abducted.
I'm here.
You're back. Okay. So you left off with test dummies dropping and time travel, and you were abducted. And so we've resolved that. You're back. You only had about 2 minutes of missing time, and we're good.
Very good. What I'm trying to say is that it's clear that the public isn't getting the scoop on flying saucers. I mean, yeah, they can read my books like Flying Saucers in Science and Captured and Top Secret Magic. And if they're very lucky and I'm lucky, there will be 2 movies made based on 2 of my books. Top Secret Magic with my book about the Majestic 12 documents, and a book by Don Schmidt and Tom Carey, Witness to Roswell. And it would be sort of a dynamic story, the Woodward Bernstein, not as friendly, of the UFO scene. And the other one is Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience. And Kathleen Martin did most of the work. She's Betty's niece and a real world-class expert on UFO abductions, incidentally. So maybe we'll all get lucky and 2 movies will be made and people will learn the truth. Now, I'm not holding my breath, you understand. But
yeah.
We do what we can. Hollywood's a crazy place. I've had some involvement in the past. But my point is that it's really strange in today's world. We have people pretending to be expert in this area. For example, one of my favorite comments, Dr. Tyson, head of the Hayden Planetarium, Neil deGrasse Tyson, a brilliant astronomer, astrophysicist, published a bunch of books, does all kinds of radio and television, has honorary degrees and all this sort of thing. He commented that the proof that governments can't keep secrets is how much we know about President Clinton's genitalia. Now think about that for a minute. What in the world does that have to do with the NSA, the NSC, the DIA, the NRO, all those CIA, all those alphabet soup agencies? Absolutely nothing. Why he made the comment, besides to get a good laugh, I don't know. A second comment he made illustrates the other side of the problem, really. So many of these astronomers who've never worked on advanced propulsion systems will pronounce that you can't get here from there. Now, it's not unusual for prominent scientists to say stupid things about what's impossible. Kathleen Martin and I have a book, Science Was Wrong. 14 chapters, each started really by some prominent scientist saying something stupid. Like space travel is utter bilge, said the British astronomer Royal in 1956, a year before Sputnik. But Dr. Tyson, on that Peter Jennings, I call it a mockumentary, of February 24th, 2005, said that, look, our fastest craft would take 70,000 years to get to the nearest star if it was heading in the right direction, which, of course, it isn't. And scientists like to get their data earlier than that. He forgot to mention a little detail. It has no propulsion system on it. It's like throwing a bottle in the ocean and saying, well, that'll tell us when we finally get to the other side, that'll tell us how fast we can cross the ocean. Or sending a balloon up, and that'll tell us how fast we can go around the planet. You might say that, hey, we have a record for circumnavigating the globe. It's a great term. Magellan's ship set the record. 3 years. Of course, that was in 1523, and now we do it in 90 minutes, but we don't want to acknowledge that. What I'm saying is they're trying to pass off nonsense as if it were very clever science. And that irks me as a physicist who worked on more canceled programs than anybody, as far as I can tell. And, you know, one of the things we've also learned, which those guys tend to forget, almost all the energy in the universe is produced by nuclear fusion. That's what powers the stars. All of them, not just the sun, not just the local ones, but all the ones in all the galaxies. Nuclear fusion. Same stuff that goes on in H-bombs. Now, we didn't figure it out until 1938. And we didn't demonstrate it until our first H-bomb in 1952. Are we supposed to believe that everybody out there started after we did on any of this stuff? And as soon as you realize that fusion is where it's at when it comes to using a lot of energy to do anything, then you're going to use it for deep space propulsion. Think of the Navy, Admiral Rickover. In 1956, they built the first nuclear-powered submarine. In World War II, a submarine could stay underwater about 24 hours. It needs oxygen to run the diesels. The new nuclear-powered submarines go around the world underwater and take periscope leave when they go past Hawaii, as one Navy guy put it to me. Look over there, you know. Now, that was in 1956. Today, you will find that there are a number of nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. Big old monsters. They can operate for 18 years without refueling. 18 years. So when we want to have a lot of energy at our beck and call, we go to nuclear techniques. Not just for bombs. I mean, bombs provide a good example. A big bomb during World War II was a 10-ton blockbuster, it was called. It took a big B-29 to carry it. That was in 1944. 1945, a first nuclear fission weapon was built and exploded at New Mexico. It released the energy of about 18,000 tons of dynamite as opposed to 10 tons for the blockbuster. Fast forward 7 years to 1952, our first H-bomb. 10 million tons of TNT energy release. That was in 52. A few years later, the Russians set one off. 57 million tons of energy release from, energy equivalent release, if you will, from one stinking bomb. But if you want to build a fusion propulsion system for deep space travel, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And you can kick particles out the back end of a rocket that can have 10 million times as much energy per particle as they can get in a dumb old chemical rocket. Why would the ancient academics and fossilized physicists keep acting as if chemical propulsion was the only thing available to us? You know, there was a astronomer in 1941 who had heard that the science fiction writers were suggesting that soon would be going to the moon. And his response was how utterly absurd. He published a scientific paper to prove that. Pages of equations. He showed the required initial launch weight of a rocket able to get a man to the moon and back would have to be 1 million tons. We did it in 1969, still with a dumb old chemical rocket whose initial launch weight was 3,000 tons. He was off by a factor of 300 million because he made every possible stupid assumption. He assumed a single-stage rocket, too low an exhaust velocity, that the rocket has to provide all the energy, that you need to carry along a retro rocket to slow you down when you come back, and a whole long list of other things that space scientists before that had long known would be required. But in other words, if you make enough bad calculations, you can come up with all kinds of crazy answers. What we want is the people who, like Werner von Braun, developed the Saturn V rocket and so forth. He was originally going to have to use 2 of those to get a man to the moon and back, Earth orbit rendezvous. That's kind of complicated. You've got 2 launches and so forth. And one engineer convinced him. He did the calculations. You know, if we did a lunar orbit rendezvous, we could get by with 1 rocket. Werner von Braun switched, and that's what we wound up doing. What I'm saying is the development of advanced propulsion and other technologies doesn't usually go on in academia. It goes on out in the national labs and industry. Lockheed developed the stealth aircraft, kind of a neat craft, took $10 billion in 10 years in secret. It was not 20 professors and 40 grad students. And it's the scope of the work that goes on outside of academia that needs to be noted here. For example, when I worked on nuclear airplanes, 1958 for General Electric Aircraft Nuclear Propulsion Department, that year we spent $100 million. We employed 3,500 people, of whom 1,100 were engineers and scientists. Now, $100 million is a lot of money in 1958. Now, to me, it's still a lot of money, but maybe not to everybody. I don't know. So, you know, you can't do it on a shoestring. But if you make it a matter of national importance, you can do it.
Hey, Stan, we have a question in the chat room. And it's
Sure.
from Bob Tarmac, and he says, regarding space travel, do you have an opinion on the electric universe model and how it would affect propulsion?
I'm not sure I know what the electric universe model is. There are all kinds of people who talk about, you know, there are electric fields associated with all the stars and so forth. But I will say this, within the atmosphere, I believe that the process that alien spacecraft use.
I think Stan
You know,
might have
it's like
got... Oh, there you are. He put Velikovsky. So, based on Velikovsky's theory, I guess.
I had a literature search done way back in 1970 of government documents using one keyword, magnetoaerodynamics. Got 900 references, of which 90% were classified. So there are a lot of people looking at electromagnetics in the atmosphere, ionized air and all that sort of thing. And what you can do is control lift, drag, heating, sonic boom production, radar profile. All these relate to if you have an electrically conducting fluid around a craft moving in the atmosphere, you can get around all those problems that I mentioned. As a matter of fact, 2 electromagnetic submarines have been built where the electrically conducting fluid is seawater. So my mantra is that technological progress comes from doing things differently in an unpredictable way. The future is not an extrapolation of the past. And yes, I think electricity is very important in the universe. As a matter of fact, there were, of course, prominent scientists who said it wasn't important at all because they hadn't measured it yet. You know, it's impossible. It's so much easier to say than, I don't know how to do that, which would be much more honest.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the disclosure topic here a minute. You know, because we've talked about what's going on in the United States and kind of globally. But I know that in the UK, the government's been releasing, well, I'm going to put this in quotation marks, classified documents that are supposedly pertain to UFOs. You know, has there been anything of merit that has come out of the UK or any other country that has decided to put out, you know, any documents as far as, you know, their UFO findings?
Well, yes and no. They haven't released, in the UK, they have not released a lot of top secret documents at all. And you have confidential, you have secret, you have top secret, and you have top secret code word. On the other hand, if you were interested, you could read 156 top secret documents from the National Security Agency about UFOs. You know, the NSA, Snowden, and all those guys. Mm-hmm. No such agency was what NSA means. Anyway, you can get 150 top secret Umbra is the code word. NSA UFO documents. There's one little problem. You can only read about one sentence per page because everything else is whited out. So they're released, but they're sure not much use. You can also get dozens of top secret Umbra CIA UFO documents. In this case, they went in the other direction. They blacked out everything except a few words per page. And, you know, you really can't learn much from those few words. And I had people say, Stan, why don't you just scrape off the black? Because they don't send you original documents. There's nothing underneath there. You know? So the other countries, now, some are making more progress, and I'm going to hear more about this. I'm going down to Brazil next week for an international UFO conference. And some of the South American countries, Brazil, Peru, Chile, Ecuador, and others, have been working with their local UFO organizations and sharing information and releasing some top secret documents. Now, the French, the English, others in Europe have not released really exciting stuff so far. And absence of evidence is not evidence for absence. In other words, because you don't have those documents doesn't mean they don't exist. Just like people say, well, the NSA is anymore. They released all those documents. Well, except for the fact you can't read them, except for one sentence per page. So we still have a cosmic Watergate. There's no question about that. I mean, we can prove that governments are withholding information. The U.S. government, it's very easy to prove they're withholding information, unless you clean up, you know, and release all the stuff that's under the blackout of the White House.
I mean, what's the point in doing that, you know, so that they can say they released so many sheets, even though they really didn't release anything?
I think so. Look, as long as the media don't push them, we need a Woodward and Bernstein. If anybody, any media group would spend, you know, a quarter of what the Washington Post did on Woodward and Bernstein and the Watergate business, political Watergate, they could blow the lid off the cosmic Watergate. I get a real response from I show some of those blacked out or whited out documents. You know, it's like some of the arguments from the nasty, noisy negativists who don't work for the government, I don't think. Like Philip Klass wrote several anti-UFO books, is always saying there's nothing to it, everything has a prosaic explanation. I get a real response when I show the audience a copy of his check to me for $1,000 for proving him wrong about one of the Majestic 12 documents. On the basis of 9 elite-type documents from the NSC, not NSA, he claimed that one of the documents I said was genuine was obviously fraudulent because it used the large pica type. And he offered me $100 each for every genuine such document, up to a maximum of 10, unfortunately. Eisenhower Library, and I've checked since, and he never did get there. He's dead now. Can't make the trip anytime soon, I don't suppose. I have been there. I'd spent weeks there. And I was going there anyway within a couple of weeks. So I went there, copied out 14 documents that met all his criteria, sent him copies and an invoice for $1,000 because he said a limit of 10, 100 each. He sent me the check. He had told everybody about challenging me and nobody about paying me. It's great for a laugh, but it shows you how weak the arguments of the debunkers are. No facts, no data. Don't bother me with the facts is the first rule of debunking. The second is what the public doesn't know. I'm not going to tell them. And the third is if you can't attack the data, attack the people. And the fourth is do your research by proclamation. Investigation is too much trouble and nobody will know the difference anyway. So I am, you might say, a very strong advocate for using the methods of science to do your research instead of the methods of propagandists, which is what happens.
So this is kind of I'm just going to throw this out, and is the lack of documents support that there isn't anything going on? But then again, with what they're releasing and all of it's blacked out, doesn't that support that there's something going on? I mean, it seems like it's kind of like this catch-22.
No, it's not catch-22. It's clear that there's something going on. What else do these 156 top-secret Umbra UFO documents, as labeled by the NSA, or the blacked-out ones as labeled by the CIA, it proves that they're holding...
Because they're blacking it out.
Yeah, unblack it or unwhiten it. So, it's proof. People say, don't you get frustrated getting that kind of response when I show the blacked out documents in my lectures or the whited out ones? I said, yeah, it's frustrating, but it proves that they're withholding it.
Well, they gave you the paper. You just can't read it, Stan. Come on. Okay, next question. Hey, what do you think about the Vatican acknowledging the possibility of extraterrestrial life? Oop. Well, I wonder if we lost him again. Stan has again been abducted, so everybody keep track of what time it is, and we'll see how long he's going to be in the ethers with the extraterrestrials. Oh, he's still gone. I mean, personally, I think it's a fascinating concept that the Vatican, and the Church has acknowledged that whole topics. It makes me wonder if there's this whole political piece to the whole thing where they're acknowledging it that they can either do disclosure or because they're going to just start losing control about, like there's like a whole conspiracy angle to the whole thing, especially if you go along with the New World Order and them wanting to take control. And if you go with the whole idea, not that this is my idea, I'm just kind of reporting it, that there are a bunch of reptilians in charge of the government, then how better to take control of the government than have the Church be on your side? Is he back? Stan, are you back? Well, he did a flyby, but he's gone again. That was fast. He was only gone for 3 minutes, but we'll lie and say he was gone for a lot longer. Are you back now, Stan?
Yeah, I'm back now. Sorry, I don't know what goes on here.
Well, I think you time travel to a different dimension, and now you're back.
Isn't that neat?
And so the question that I asked, but I guess you had got dropped off when I asked the question, was what do you think about the Vatican acknowledging the possibility of extraterrestrial life?
Oh, yeah. Actually, the Pope did that several years ago. You can see no reason why.
I haven't had you on.
What?
I haven't had you on, so I'm just curious what you think about it.
Oh, okay. Well, the Pope said there's no reason that the God who made us didn't make our brethren in outer space. And the Vatican astronomer has said something like that. And my first thought was, who's he been talking to? So I'm convinced that they know that there's something going on. And, one of the kickers here, as I indicated earlier, is when everybody acknowledges that there are aliens coming here, you have a couple of problems. Who speaks for the planet? And no country wants to admit that they're not the one who speaks for the planet. And don't tell me we'll have an election because with 1.3 billion Chinese and 1 billion people from India, the United States isn't going to go along with a one person, one vote question. So I think we're growing up. I think that we're recognizing that we're not the big shots. We're not the most advanced civilization around. We're a backwater of interest to aliens, I think primarily, not only, but primarily because we pose a threat to the neighborhood. when we learned about nuclear fusion, we suddenly were in a position where we could take our brand of friendship, everybody else calls it hostility, out there. You know, it's easy to forget, especially for young people who weren't around at the time. World War II, this great society of ours, killed 60 million Earthlings. We destroyed 1,700 cities. We are clearly a primitive society whose major activity is tribal warfare. So I can understand why aliens would not want us to take our brand of friendship out there. I think one reason for coming here is to quarantine us. If you were an alien, would you want us out there with that track record? I don't think so. Remember, this year, we Earthlings will spend $1 trillion on things military. Thousands of children die every single day of preventable disease or starvation. That tells you a lot about the kind of society we have here, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, of course it does. I mean, I think that, as a society, we need to grow up. I mean, that's unless we annihilate ourselves before we get a chance to do that.
Well, I hope we don't annihilate ourselves. And it looks like the aliens are concerned about that because of all these cases where missiles have been shut down at missile sites in Malmstrom Air Force Base and other places where UFOs show up and suddenly 10 missiles go offline one after the other. That can't happen, but it did. And it's happened in Russia, and it's happened in several other locations. Clearly, they are concerned about the idiots with their fingers on the trigger. And, a lot of people don't realize, yes, only 2 nuclear weapons were dropped on people, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. However, we smart Earthlings have exploded 2,000 nuclear weapons. And there's a lot more that haven't been used yet. So the world is a dangerous place, and it's not clear how we will get from where we are now to where we will be in 30 years when 8 more countries have nuclear weapons. Scares the heck out of me, and I'm a nuclear guy.
Well, you know what I find interesting just talking about nuclear weapons is that you would think, technologically speaking, we would have, you think of a nuclear bomb as being like the death machine, like the big bad guy on the block. But that's ancient technology at this point in time. And you would think that from that perspective, we'd have something better, something that could blow us up better than a nuclear warhead. That sounds terrible, but it's true.
Well, a weapon that can release 10 million, the energy of 10 million tons TNT is pretty scary to me. Anyway, how much better do you need?
I don't know.
We managed without nuclear weapons to kill 60 million people in the World War II, but I'm not saying, I should make clear, I'm not saying there isn't anything called better, unquote. It's hard to use that term about killing more people at once. Maybe when there will be a quark weapon, we physicists think that subnuclear particles are made up of quarks. And you say, so what? Well, it turns out when you go from a big fat atom to a very small nucleus, you go down in size by a factor of 10,000 and up in energy by 10 million. So what happens when we get into the basic particles and break up the quarks and learn how to use the weapons? There's that kind of me. But I don't think we're there yet.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to throw a long shot one at you. What do you think about all of the talk about reptilians and underground bases and Dulce and all of that stuff? I mean, I find that whole concept very interesting. One of my big things is looking at the mythological record, and the mythological record supports what they imply. But I mean, from your research, what do you think?
Well, and Martin, with whom I've written a couple of books, is an expert on abductions, and she has heard stories that imply, if you will, that there are reptilians coming here. But I think the situation is as complicated as it was for the people in Central America. In the next 50 years, there were all kinds of people who came to the New World for all kinds of reasons. Some of them pretty nasty. Some of them, they weren't all nice guys. So I think that it would be surprising if people had sent out their rulers, 10,000 years ago. Every library in the neighborhood lists Earth. Interesting place to visit. Wouldn't want to live there. But, and maybe it was used as a jail, if you will. They dumped all the bad guys here, and that's why they're so nasty to each other. When I was down in Australia, I was frankly quite surprised how proud they are of their convict heritage. Seems a funny thing to be proud of, but they were. The good guys. So I think there's a variety of guys and gals coming here, and I think there's a variety of reasons. If you go to O'Hare Airport, there's not just one reason for people to fly to or from that place. There are all kinds of reasons. Some of them rather strange. Play games, a lot of professional athletes, etc. A lot of spies. So we don't have a complete picture here. I'm not saying that there's one civilization and everybody connected with it has one purpose. I don't think it's like that at all. It's complicated. As soon as you allow authors being able to get here a very long time ago, then, you can have all kinds of...
All right. Well, I think Stan was abducted again. Okay, Rita, along those lines, does Stan have any take on Project Serpo? Well, we can ask him when he comes back. Hopefully comes back. That whole Project Serpo thing, I think, is pretty interesting. We had, who did we have on? I can't remember, but we did a show on that topic. So I don't know if you've missed that show, but it was pretty interesting, about a group of humans going to a different planet and living there for 12 years. And, you start looking into some of the stuff that comes out of, ufology, and it almost seems like something out of a science fiction movie, because if any of it is true, then it opens the door to some of the other stuff that's being said as being true, and it's just amazing what it could be. So there's some comments in... Oh, there you are. So there was a question in the chat room since you're back, and I'll ask you because I was just kind of talking about it. Do you have a take on that Project Serpo? It was another flyby. Okay, so Stan was flying by. This is worse than any of the ghost shows that I've done recently, because usually we have this kind of issue on ghost shows. Hey, maybe it's the government interfering with the programming and trying to... They're whiting Stan out, or are they blacking him out? And see, he was going to say something really important, and they were like, eliminate the conversation. Up, Stan.
I'm back, but yeah, I'm here, but I missed most of that comment.
Okay, well, no, I was just kind of going on. Actually, I said that the government's interfering with this broadcast and they're whiting you out because you're going to say something important and they don't want it to get out to the listeners. So, but there was
what a nice compliment that is.
So there was a question from Carol in the chat room, and the question is, do you have a take on Project Serpo?
Well, I just mentioned Serpo. Yeah, I did a column once about Project Serpo, and I was not convinced at all that really happened. I think somebody had a vivid imagination. There were too many inconsistencies. If you check how many people and all the rest of that, I was not convinced. And if anybody sends me an email, I'll send them a copy of the column. That's FSPHYS, Flying Saucer Physicist is the shorthand form, at Rogers, ROGERS.com. If they'll send me a note asking for a copy of my column on Project Serpo, be happy to send it to them. fsphys@rogers.com. And the address, of course, is on my website, www.stantonfriedman.com.
Right.
So it's negative, in other words, about Serpo.
I mean, you're a brave man giving out your email address online. Mine gets bombarded so bad as it is. It's like, no, go through the webpage. So what's next for you, Stan? I mean, it's been a while since you've been on, but what's all coming up for you? You said you were going to Brazil for a conference. What's that one about?
Well, that's an international conference because of the Brazilians breaking out the government data and the scientific data. That should be interesting. I've been down there before. Actually, this Saturday I'll be going to Chicago to be interviewed by the Science Channel for television, and we'll be talking about NASA astronauts having sightings and things like that. And after Brazil, I'll be going to Finland to help them celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Finnish UFO Society. I've spoken there before. I like Finland, although they have a strange language. Finnish and Hungarian are the two weird languages that aren't like any other languages around. And I was at a conference with a Russian general. He didn't speak English, I didn't speak Russian, and we worked through a Finnish interpreter. And it was kind of funny, you know. But so I'm going to Finland, and then I'll be in Texas. Next year, of course, I'll be at Roswell, and I'll be speaking at the Mutual UFO Network Symposium, which will be in the Philadelphia area in July, second, third week. It'll be on my website, www.stantonfriedman.com. And I'm thinking about another book. I got some ideas. It could be kind of fun. Really a challenge not to repeat myself from Flying Saucers and Science and Capture and Top Secret Magic. And I'm going to spend some more time at archives. I miss going to them, and I will be near the American Philosophical Society library in Philadelphia. And they have the papers of a number of people, which I'm anxious to look at, frankly. And may dig up some new things. That was very important to my research on Majestic 12, was being able to look at documents. And I get people giving me a hard time, but they don't check out the documents. It's kind of a shame. You know, don't do your research by proclamation. Do it by investigation.
Here, Stan. I find that so much where people will bash you and go, brah, 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 brah. And it's like, well, you know, if you actually read the book, you would find out that this is what the book actually says, you know, or this document or whatever, but they just go by some second, third, 25th hand material that may or may not be true and hold it up like, you know, this is it. This is everything, and it irritates me. Okay,
yes, wait. Very irritating. And, you know, the same rules for debunkers are used in every other field, you know, whether it's ghosts, all that kind of stuff, reincarnation. In one of the chapters in our book, Science Was Wrong, deals with all the published literature showing that paranormal is normal, so to speak, that is good, solid experiments validating what sounds like crazy notions. But, you know, if you look back, almost all our research for the last 120 years, much of it anyway, has been concerned with discovering things that we couldn't see. Neutrons, gamma rays, X-rays, DNA, bacteria, viruses. You know, you can't see them, so therefore they don't exist, right? Effective electromagnetic fields on people. There's healing that goes on from these things. And so we need to be very wary of the people who say, well, I can't see it, give me a body, and then I'll believe in aliens. If I see a 747 fly over, I got to shoot it down before you believe that I saw it? You know, it's ridiculous. And Carl Sagan, we were classmates for 3 years at the University of Chicago. And Carl once said that there are interesting UFO sightings that aren't reliable. There are reliable UFO sightings that aren't interesting, but there are no interesting and reliable UFO sightings, and that's total baloney. He doesn't give a reference. If you look at the largest study ever done for the United States Air Force, Blue Book Special Report 14, you find the more the reliable the sighting, the more likely to be unexplainable. Of course, that didn't keep the Secretary of the Air Force from lying about the study. Now, some people say, you mean the government lies, Stan? Yeah, it does. He said, even the unknown 3% could have been identified as conventional phenomena or illusions if more complete observational data had been available. The only trouble is when you look at the report, as opposed to the press release, the unknowns were 21.5%, not 3%. They were completely separate from the 9.3% of the 3,201 sightings, big data pool. The ones for which there wasn't enough information were completely separate from the sightings for which they had an explanation, and for the sightings that they couldn't identify. Not enough data? That's how it was labeled. But the Secretary of the Air Force lied through his teeth about it. You'd have to ask him why he did that. Obviously, national policy. But what I'm saying is the history. But
let me ask you this question.
Involvement in scientific.
Sure. When is enough data enough? I mean, we have 2 minutes left, but when is enough data enough? I mean, you have multiple people sightings. You have all of this stuff, and when is enough data enough? I mean, in all of these fields,
I think it's been enough for a long time. And remember, you got to ask the right question. The question isn't, are all UFOs alien spacecraft? That's as silly as asking, are all isotopes fissionable? Or the basketball coach saying, are all people 7 feet tall? No. Give me one, he says. I don't care about the rest. It's the same with the UFOs. If you look at any big field of research where you're looking at a large number of things, like looking for a cure for cancer, are you going to insist that if all the drugs don't work, none do? That's absurd. If you're sick, give me the one that works. I don't care about all the ones who don't. So we have far more than enough data to establish beyond a reasonable doubt that some UFOs are intelligently controlled extraterrestrial vehicles, and that some few people within government have known this for a long time. I didn't say all sightings are alien craft. I didn't say everybody in the government knows what's going on. I'm saying some. As a nuclear guy, I'm so glad that there are some few isotopes that are fissionable, even though most of them aren't. So it's a question of educating the media. One of the PhD theses that's been done had some scathing remarks to make about how bad press coverage was of the subject, how inaccurate, a complete failure to look at the relevant data, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm hopeful that what Max Planck said, a German scientist, it turns out to be true, that new ideas come to be accepted, not because their opponents come to believe in them, but because their opponents die and a new generation grows up that's accustomed to them. So it shall be with UFOs, and I hope I'm around to see it.
Hear, hear. Well, Stan, our time tonight is up. And so thank you so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure. And, you're always welcome back on the show. And I hope you enjoyed your little abduction experiences during our time together. They were fun. And you have a great evening. Fun. And I will talk to you again soon.
Thank you very much. Good night.
You're welcome. Good night. That's Stan Friedman. His webpage is stantonfreeman.com. That's stantonfreeman.com. And we'll be back with Christopher O'Brien talking about cattle mutilation after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.